Welcome to an exciting project focused on mastering JavaScript array methods. This project is designed to help you understand and apply 5 powerful array methods: feature, map, sort, filter, and reduce. These methods are essential tools for working with arrays in JavaScript and can simplify many tasks. What you'll learn: we'll use this to loop through data and display a list of users with their randomly generated wealth. A Generate User button will let you add new users dynamically. Map. Learn how to create a new array by manipulating existing data. For instance, we'll double the wealth of each user with a single click. Organize the data by sorting users by their wealth, with the richest appearing at the top. Filter. Extract specific data, like filtering out users to show only millionaires. Reduce. Calculate the total wealth of all users by summing their wealth and displaying it in the DOM. How it works: we'll fetch random user data using the Random User API. Each user will have a first and last name combined with a randomly generated wealth formatted as currency. With buttons to interact with the data, you'll see these array methods in action. Add users. Dynamically add new users with random names and wealth. Double wealth. Use map to manipulate array data and update the DOM. Sort by riches. Reorder users based on their wealth using sort. Show only millionaires. Filter out users below $1 million. Calculate total wealth. Use reduce to sum all user wealth and display it. This project is simple but powerful, offering a hands-on way to practice these essential methods. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, watch the full video for detailed steps, like the video and comment below if you want the source code. Don't forget to check out our full playlist for more projects. Let's dive in and start coding.
Okay, so we're going to start on the UI for our DOM array methods project. So I just have my 3 main files here: index.html, script.js, and style CSS. And we're going to start in the HTML. So let's create our boilerplate. We'll just call this DOM array methods. And let's link in our script, our style sheet, and then our script. And then in the body here, we're going to have h1. Just say DOM array methods. And then underneath that, we're going to have a class of container. So everything's going to be put in this container. Basically, we're going to have a sidebar with the buttons, and then the main area with the people, or the users. So let's use an aside tag here, which is an HTML5 tag for side content that's not the main area, so usually the sidebar. And in here, we're going to have all of our buttons. Now I'm just going to paste these in, and each icon here, each text has an icon at the end that I just pasted right in. So if you want to just copy it from the repository, or if you want to use font awesome, or just use no icons at all, you can do that. One thing I am going to do though is change these underscores to dashes, just to be consistent with the rest of the course. So that's our sidebar, and then underneath that we'll have our main tag. And I'll give this an ID of main because we'll need to grab onto it within the JavaScript. And here we're just going to have an h2, and in here I'm going to put a strong tag and say person, and then outside of that strong tag we're just going to say wealth. And that should be it for the HTML. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up with Live Server. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. We'll just kind of make this a little smaller so we can see it as we style it. And we can close up the HTML file. Let's go into our CSS. So first thing I'm going to do here, as usual, is just add box sizing, border box on everything. And then for the body, just going to add a very light gray background. So we'll do F4 3 times. And for the font family, I'm going to use Arial. And we want to display the body as flexbox. So if I do that, everything goes horizontal. We don't want that, we want it vertical. So we just want to change the flex direction to a column instead of a row. Okay, that way we can use align items, and we're going to align to the center. Okay, and then I'm going to set a minimum height on the body as usual to 100 viewport heights, so the whole viewport, and then just remove any margin. So that's the body. Now let's work on the container, which wraps around everything except the H1. So this I'm also going to display as flex. So that's going to put, basically it's going to align the sidebar and the main area horizontal, and that's what we want. So we're not going to change it to a column, and we're going to add just padding on the entire container of 20 pixels, and let's set a margin 0 top and bottom, and then auto left and right. Make sure it's in the middle. We'll set a max width of 100%, and I'm going to set the regular width to 800 pixels. That way it doesn't go past 800 pixels when we stretch it out. So for the sidebar, we'll just use the aside tag to style it. And let's first of all set a padding. Let's do 10 pixels top and bottom, 20 left and right. And we're going to just make the width here 250. So the sidebar will be 250. So sidebar is right here with the buttons. And then I'm just going to add a border to kind of separate the two. So let's say border on the right. We'll do 1 pixel solid, and let's do 111. Okay. And that should be it for the sidebar. Now let's do the buttons that are inside of the sidebar. So we're going to set a background color of white. And let's set a border. Let's do solid, 1 pixel, and we'll do 111. And let's make them rounded with border radius 5 pixels. And what else? We also want a cursor pointer. I usually like to put that first, so just add that. Just so when we hover over the buttons, it turns into a cursor. And I'm going to display them as blocks so that each button is on its own line, okay, because naturally they're inline. And then we're going to set the width of the button to be 100% of its container, which is the aside, so they're all going to be the same width. And we'll add a little bit of padding. Let's do 10 pixels. Let's do margin bottom to break them up a little bit so they're not on top of each other. We'll do 20 pixels. Okay, and we'll just make the font weight bold. I think we should be good. Let's make the font size a little bigger. Let's do 14 pixels. There we go. So that looks pretty good. Now for the main area, not much. I'm just going to set flex to 1 and then just add some padding. Okay, just to kind of push it away. Now the H2, I'm going to add some styles to that. Let's set a border bottom. We'll do the same thing, 1 pixel solid and 111. And set some padding on the bottom to push the other content down. And I'm going to display flex. And what this is going to do is put the strong tag. So the person is in strong, wealth is not. So these are going to be the 2 flex items. And what I want to do is have the wealth over here. So we can take we can justify the content and take the remaining space, which is this space right here, and put it in between the 2 by using space between. So if I do that, now we have kind of like table headings, but without having to use tables. So we have that effect. Now if I set the font weight, I can't spell today for some reason. So the font weight, I'm going to set to 300, and that's going to apply to the non-strong tag. So now the person is actually bold. This isn't as bold. And then let's just align it up here more. So I'm just going to set the margin to 0. We want 0 on the top. There we go. Okay, now there's going to be some stuff in here. So, I mean, we can't see it yet because we're going to fetch from the API, and then we're going to create people and put them in here with their wealth. So I'm just going to add the styling for that. There's going to be an H3, and the H3 is going to be at the bottom when we calculate the wealth, and it's going to have a lot of the same styles as the H2. So I'm just going to copy that, except I'm going to set, let's see, the only difference really, I want to add a background color of white. And then for the margin, instead of 0020, we're going to do 2000, like that. Okay, and then everything else, actually the padding, we're going to do padding 10, not padding bottom. So that's for the H3. Then we're also going to have a person class for each person, and we want to display that as flex, and also do space between. Just grab that. And then set the font size, set the font size to, let's do 20 pixels, so nice and big. And then I just want to add a margin bottom to separate things out. Margin bottom, and let's do 10 pixels. Okay, so we can't see the results of this, but I just wanted to get the CSS out of the way. So now we have everything done as far as the UI. Now we need to go ahead and make it work with our JavaScript, and we'll start that in the next video. Okay, so in this video we're going to start on our JavaScript, and the first thing I want to do is be able to, first of all, select all the DOM elements that we need, and then I want to be able to generate a random user, and we're going to use the help of the randomuser.me API, which just basically generates a bunch of user data, and we're going to get a random first name and last name. And then we're also going to add a random money property for the wealth, so that we can use some of these high order array methods with that data. Okay, so, and another thing I'm going to do is we're going to use the fetch API, obviously, to get from our API, but I'm also going to use async await, and that allows us to basically make asynchronous requests in a cleaner way without having to use the .then syntax. So let's go ahead and grab everything we need. So the main document.getElementById. So that's the main area, has an ID of main, and we need 6 of these. So let's do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because we have 5 buttons we need to get. So add user, double. We have, what's the next one? So show millionaires. And we have sort. And we have calculate wealth. I believe those are the correct IDs. And then we just need to create our variables. So for this one, let's say add user btn. This one will be double btn. Let's do, what's this? Show millionaires. Sort button. And if I misspell something, don't worry about it. I'll fix it when I realize it. So calculate, what's this? Calculate wealth btn. Okay. So now we're selecting everything we need. Let's initialize an array here. I'm going to call data, and that's basically where we want to put all of the people. Okay, it's going to be an array of objects that has a name for the first and last name, and then a money value, which will be the wealth that we can use some of these methods on. So let's fetch, or yeah, we'll say fetch random user and add money. Okay, so we're going to create a function here called, let's call this get random user. Now I'm going to use the fetch API. So normally what we would do is fetch, and we put the URL in here, which in this case is going to be randomuser.me/API, and I can show you what that gives us. So if we make a GET request in the browser, you'll see that it just gives us this results array with a bunch of user fields. Okay, we're not going to use, all we're really going to use here is the first and last name, but it does just fetch random data for a user. Now, usually what we do is add a .then, we get a response, we take that response and set that, set that to res.json, and then we'd have another .then because that returns a promise, and then we'd have the data, and we could do what we want with that data. So with async await, we don't have to chain on these .thens. So let me just show you what I mean. We're going to go ahead and just mark this function as asynchronous by just typing async in front of it. And then the result from this fetch request we can put right into a variable, so we'll call it response. However, fetch is asynchronous, meaning it happens basically behind the scenes, so we have to wait for it to finish, okay, because it returns a promise once it's finished. So we have to put a wait in front of it. Now with the fetch API, like you've seen, we have to actually get the data by calling res.json. So we can create another variable called data, and we can set that to res.json. However, that returns a promise as well, so we have to await that. Okay, and then we can go ahead and console log our data. And we have to, of course, call this, so we're going to call this up here. Let's say get random user, and I want to generate 3 users to begin with, so we're going to call this 3 times. And then we'll go ahead and take a look in the console, and we get these 3 objects that has a results array and an info object. The info object isn't important to us, we don't need it. All we need is in this results array, there's 1 item, and it has a bunch of user fields. What we want is in the name object here, there's a first and last property. So that's what we're dealing with. And then we'll add the money property onto the user. So what we can do is set a variable here called user, set it to the data we get back, and then the results array, and we want the first item in the array. And then we're going to construct a new user, which is going to be an object with a name. We want to use backticks here because we're using a template literal, so we can put variables in. And we're going to take the user name object, and we want the first property or value. And then a space, and then we'll get the last name with user.name.last. Okay, and then for money, what we'll do is generate a random number up to 1 million. So I'm going to math.floor, which just rounds a number down, and we're going to set math.random, generate a random decimal, but multiply it by 1 million. Okay, so that it's up to 1 million. And then we'll go ahead and just console log new user and see what that gives us. It gives us 3 people, okay, with the random first and last name. Some of them aren't English. And then a money value, which is just going to be a random number, lower than 1 million. Okay, so what we want to do next is take this and pass it into a function called add data, because we want to add the new object to the data array. So function add data takes in that object, take the data array and then just call the push method, which it just pushes something onto the end of an array that will add the object. Okay, so I'm just going to save this, and in the next video we want to show this stuff in the DOM, right? We want to show it here, so we're going to be working with the forEach array method, which is probably the simplest of all of them. It's just basically a loop. You just loop through and do whatever you want with each item. In our case, we're going to show it in the UI here. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. Okay, now that we're generating users and we're pushing it onto the data array, we need to display the users in the DOM. All right, so in the add data function, we're actually going to call another function called update DOM. Okay, so we're going to run that, and obviously we need to create that. So let's say we're just going to update DOM. Now this function is actually going to take in, it's going to have a parameter called provided data. Okay, now here we're not actually passing in anything, so if we don't pass in anything, we want a default value of just the default data array. So to set a default value in a function, we just simply set an equals here and set that to data. So what it's saying is if nothing is passed in, like in this case, then we're going to just use data. We're going to use that data array. And that's of ES6 or ES 2015 is when they implemented this. Before that, you couldn't do this. You had to do some other crap within here, which made it very difficult. But luckily, ES6 saved us from a lot of hassle with JavaScript. So what we want to do first is clear the main div, because we don't want to just keep adding to it. We want to, in a lot of cases, we want to replace what's already there. So we're going to set main inner HTML, and we're just going to set it to what it has as its default, which if we look in the HTML is just an H2 with this person wealth. So we can actually just copy that and go ahead and put that in quotes. So that's clearing it. And then we want to take the provided data and we want to loop through that. So this is where we're going to use the forEach method. Okay, a high order array method is a method that we can call on an array, so we can just simply do dot forEach. Okay, now before we had forEach, if we wanted to loop through an array, and you don't have to write this, you don't have to type this out, I'm just showing you, we would have to do some kind of for loop where we would say like I is equal to 0, and then we'd say as long as I is less than the provided data dot length, so we'd have to count however many elements are in the array, and then we'd increment, and then down here we could access provided data and then whatever that I value is. Okay, and then we could get like the name or whatever. So forEach has helped us and stopped us from having to do this, which is a lot more code and a lot uglier, frankly. So all we have to do here is pass in, we can say item, well actually I should show you that this is a function that we pass in. I'll show you the long way first and then show you an arrow function. So it takes in a callback, and we could call this item, in a lot of cases you'll see it called item. The data, there are people in the data, so we could call it person, that would also make sense, but I'm just going to stick to item. Now, if you want to use a regular function like this, that's fine, but we can make this an arrow function and make it look a little neater. So we can just get rid of the word function, and then right after this parameter here, we can put in a fat arrow, which is an equal sign and greater than. So this is the same as just saying function. Now, with a forEach, your item is going to be the first, so the first parameter, but you can also have the index if you need to have access to the index for some reason. Basically, the first one will be 0, next will be 1, and so on. You can also access the entire array with the third parameter. Now, we only need the item, so we're just going to have this one parameter. And since there's only one, we don't even need these parentheses. Okay, and that's with any arrow function. If you only have one parameter, you don't need the surrounding parentheses. So in here, we want to obviously build out the people here and output them here. So what we'll do is create a brand new element for each of the items or each of the people. So let's create a variable here called element, and with our document object we have a method called createElement, which will do just that. It'll create an HTML element, and we want to create a div, so we're going to put in div here. Let's actually close up the sidebar. So this will create a div. Now we want to add a class onto this new div called person. Okay, remember we styled that person class in the CSS. So we can take our element and we can use the class list object here. This will give us a list of the classes, but we can also call methods on this like add, remove, toggle. We want to add a class. So we want to say class list add, and we want to add person as a class onto this div. Now we want to fill it in with whatever HTML we're going to put in it. So we're going to take that element and use inner HTML, and we're going to set this to backticks. So we're going to use a template string here, and we want a strong tag. So the each of these items is it's an object with a name and a money value, okay, which we constructed up here. Okay, we passed it in here, and then we added it to the array, and we're looping through that array. So we have the name. Now outside of the strong, let's put the item. So that should do it for the HTML. Now to actually insert it into the DOM, because if I save this, nothing happens. We need to we're going to take our main element, which is this area here, and we're going to use the append child method, which will append the child element, and that child element is going to be our element that we just constructed. So now we have 3 users, and the reason we have 3 is because we called this 3 times. If I get rid of 2 of those, we'll only have 1, but I want to just start off with 3. Okay, so we have each of the object's name value and the money value. Now this doesn't look very good. I want this to be formatted as money, so let's actually create a separate function. We'll say let's say format number as money. So we'll create a function, format money. Now usually when I want to do something like this, some kind of format, I'll look it up on Stack Overflow. So I actually have a link, and I'm going to paste this right in the code so you guys have access to it. So this is the link where I got this solution. So it's the second answer. Let's see. So that's the first answer, and then this one right here. So this is pretty simple, short and fast solution, and it just includes a regular expression with a replace method that will take in a number. I don't know why this is happening. There we go. So it takes in a number such as this, and it adds on 2 decimal places with 2 fixed, and then it just formats it as this type of number. So what we'll do here is just grab this, and let's go down here. So format money is going to take in a number, and then we're going to return from that and paste that in, except we're not going to use this. We're going to use whatever number is passed in. So it'll just return it as this type of format, this money format. Okay, so now up here where we're outputting item.money, let's just wrap this in format money, wrapping that function. So now if we save, you can see that we get the money format. One thing I want to do though is add a $sign. So let's just go right where we're returning this, and we'll just concatenate it, use a plus sign like that, and some quotes, and just put in a $sign. Okay, so now we have a $sign before it. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Now, the last thing I want to do in this video is just have the functionality to add a user. By just clicking this, it should add a random user with random money. And that's really simple because we already have the function created, getRandomUser. So we're just going to take our, let's actually put a comment here and say event listeners. So we're going to take our add user button, and we can add an event listener. We want to listen for a click on this button, and then we're going to call getRandomUser. Okay, so if I save this and I click this button, it's going to go ahead and just keep adding random users. All right, or random people, people, users, whatever you want to call them. Okay, so that should give you a good idea of how forEach works. It just loops through, and then all we're doing is outputting a new element for each of these items or each of these people. So in the next video, I want to do the double money. Okay, so if we click this, we want to double everyone's money. So we'll use map for that, which is another hierarchy. And let's also do the sort, which we'll use the sort method to do, so we can sort by the richest. Alright, so I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so in this video, we're going to work on this double money button, and we're going to do this by using the map array method. Now, I just want to mention that in some projects, I might kind of repeat myself. I know that in the sorted list project, we So let's say we have an array of numbers. We'll just do 1 through 5, and then let's create another variable called array2. Now what map does is it loops through an array just like forEach does, except it returns another array from it. Okay, so forEach just loops through it and then you do whatever you want inside the forEach loop. But this will return something. That's why we're setting another variable. So we want to take the original array and call .map. And .map takes in a function just like forEach does. And in here we can put in, you know, item or number or whatever we want to call each item in the array. Now I like to shorten this up and use an arrow function, so I'm going to get rid of that and then just put an arrow here. And then inside here, and by the way, this can also, you can also have the index and then the entire array if you need that, just like with forEach. But what we want to do here is return something from this. And in this case, I'm going to return a string. I'm going to use backticks and just put in the word number, colon, and then put in the item. Okay, the item obviously is whatever the number is at whatever iteration we're at. Now, this won't do anything if we run it because we need to actually console log. So if I console log what we have in array2, and we run this, you can see it returns an array of number 1, number 2, and so on. So basically, we're just running a function on each item in the array, and we can manipulate it however we want. In this case, we just added some text. Now, with the double functionality, that's very easy. All we have to do is take the item in each array and then multiply it by 2. So if I run that, we get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, and to make this even easier, since this is a single expression inside of an arrow function, we don't even need the return keyword, and we don't need the curly braces. So we can actually just go like that. And since we're only using item just with a single parameter, we don't even need these. And now we'll do the same thing, it just looks much cleaner. Alright, so let's take what we've just learned here and let's apply it in our little app. Okay, so first thing we want to do is add an event listener to this double money button. So down here, I'll just copy this down and let's change this to double button. And we want to call on click a function called double money. Okay, and we're going to put that right below get random user. Say double everyone's money, which is always nice. Say double money. Okay, so we have the data array, that's where all this stuff is getting stored. We use let, that means that we can reassign it. So let's take that data array and set it to the same data array, but we want to map through it. Because remember, map returns an array. And in here we want to put a function, so we'll say for each user, we're going to go ahead and return. So for basically each iteration, we're going to return an object. And I want to copy everything that is in the user, which is right now just name and money. Now we can use the spread operator here to copy what we have in that user object here. So this is just going to return the same exact thing that is already there. Okay, and I'll double it in a second, but I just want to call update DOM because every time we change something, we need to call this again in order to update this. So if I save this and I click double money, something's happening. We can't see it here, but it's actually taking the data and it's reassigning it. Okay, it's mapping through, and then it's just returning the same thing and reassigning it to that data. And then it's updating the DOM. Now, I want to double the money, so I'm just going to add here money and set that to user, which is the object, the current object, the money times 2. So now, if I save that, we go over here and I click double money, now you can see that it's actually updating the money. And it's putting the name and stuff in the object because it's a spread operator here. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense. So again, map is pretty easy to understand. It just loops through and you can basically run a function on each item in the array, and you can use that item for whatever you want to return for that specific iteration. And you can put that into a variable, which we've done here, and then we passed it in to update DOM, and it showed it in the DOM. Okay, so in the next video, I want to do the sort. So I want to be able to sort by richest. So put whoever has the most wealth, we'll put it at the top and sort it that way. And we're going to do that with the sort method. Okay, so we'll get to that next. Okay, so now we want to be able to sort by wealth. So put the richest at the top. So this is the docs for sort. So it sorts the elements of an array in place and returns a sorted array. Now the default sort order is ascending, built upon converting the elements to strings. So this is important, and I'm going to give you an example here. And again, I gave this example in the sorted list project that we did. But we're going to have an array of numbers like 1. Let's do 1, 2, 110, 3, say 4, and 330. Okay, so actually I didn't give this a variable name. Let's call this array. Okay, so now I'm going to set this to, let's say, sorted array, and set this to that array above dot sort. And let's just see what that gives us. So if I console.log sorted array. So what it gives us is 1, and then you might expect 2 to be next, but 110 is next. So it's basically looking at these as strings, as it says up here, built upon converting the elements into strings. So when you're sorting things numerically, you can't just do dot sort and that's it. You have to use a compare function. Okay, so this compare function right here, you pass it in and it has 2 parameters. The first element, which is the first element for comparison, and then the second element for comparison. So if the compare function is supplied, all undefined array elements are sorted according to the return value of that compare function. And we commonly pass in A and B as the parameters. So just to show you what we would do here is we would pass in a function. So this is our compare function, and we'd pass in A and B, although you could call this anything you'd like. And then let's say we want this to be in ascending order. So we would return here A minus B. So if I run that, you can see now we get the correct numerical order, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 330. If we wanted this to be in descending order, we would take B and minus from A. So if we run that, then it's going to go the other way. And of course, we don't need to do this. We can use an arrow function like that. And since this is only a single expression, we can even get rid of that curly brace. We can get rid of the return. We can get rid of that curly brace. And we can run it and we get the same thing. Okay, so let's again apply this to our application. So we're going to create another event listener here, and let's call this, or not call this, but let's use the sort button. And the function, we'll say sort by richest. And we'll go up here, down right below double money. Sorts users by richest. Sort by richest. Okay, now we want to do kind of the same thing that we just did in the little REPL in the documentation. We're going to take the data and we're just going to sort it. Okay, however, we need to pass in that compare function. So I'm going to pass in a set of parentheses with A and B, and then I'm going to use an arrow. Now, I can't just do B minus A because they're objects, right? They're not just single numbers. So we have to take the money property, so B dot money minus A dot money. And the reason I'm doing B minus A and not A minus B is because I want it to be descending. I want the richest first, the most money first. And then after we do that, we just have to update the DOM again. Okay, so let's save that and let's take a look at this. So Rocio, or however you say this, that she or he, whatever, is the richest anyways, but this should switch spots. Arlo should be second. So let's click on sort by richest, and you can see that they got sorted. If I reload, let's try again. So now Gabriel should go to the top, and it works. Alright, so in the next video I want to show only the millionaires. So I want to be able to filter out from the array. So there's a high order array method called filter that we can use that is very helpful. So we'll get into that next. Okay, so now we want to show only the millionaires. So we're going to use a high order array method called filter. So I'm going to clear this up. This is just the MDN docs. And of course, you know, look through this if you want to read more into it and go more in depth. But filter basically allows us to do just that, filter things out. So if we have an array, and let's just set this to some numbers. I'm going to do 20, 23, 25, 30, 21, 50, and 60. So we can actually create a new array here. And let's say under 30. And ultimately what I want to do is take this array and filter out anything that is under 30. Okay, so it should return only numbers that are above 30. So we can do that by taking the array, and this returns an array just like map does and many of the other ones. So we're going to call array.filter, and same format, takes in a function. Let's say for each item, and we want to return, so we're going to return something for each iteration, and we want to return a condition, okay, or it's going to return the items based on a condition, and our condition is going to be item greater than 30. Alright, and then we'll go down here and we'll console.log under 30. Run, and now, I'm sorry, I said greater than, let's do less than. So our condition is less than 30. And you can see down here we get 20, 23, 25, 21. So 50, 60, and 30 were stripped out. We could put a greater than or equal than, and that will include 30 as well. But basically you can put any condition here, and it will go ahead and basically just filter it out. Alright, so with that in mind, let's go back to our code here, and let's add an event listener, and we want our show millionaires button. And we're going to say it's a function here, let's say show, what do we want to call this? Yeah, we'll call it show millionaires. So we'll go up. Let's go below our sort. Let's say filter only. So I'm going to take that data variable, because remember we can reassign it because we use let, and we're going to set it to data.filter. If you want to pause the video and try this out yourself, you can. I mean, it's basically the same thing we just did. We're going to set this to, we'll say for every user, we want to have the condition where the user.money is greater than 1 million. And then we just need to update the DOM. So let's save that, and I'm just going to, let's see, we have no millionaires here, so let's double. So now this guy is the only millionaire, so if I click show only millionaires, now we only see him. Alright, so pretty simple. These are the single lines of code that do quite a bit. These methods here are great. Sort, filter, map. So yeah, so now we can filter out anyone that's not a millionaire. So in the next video, we're going to do the calculate entire wealth, and we're going to use reduce. Reduce is a little more complicated. It's often used to add everything together. That's what we're going to do here, is we're going to add everyone's money together using what's called an accumulator, and then we'll go ahead and show that down at the bottom. Okay, so in this video we want to do the calculate wealth. So we basically want to calculate everybody's money, total it, and reduce is the perfect method to do that. So it executes a reducer function on each element of the array, resulting in a single output value. Okay, so we're not actually returning an array in this case, we're returning a single value, which we want to be the total. So to do this, let's create an initial array here. And we'll just set this to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what I want to do is add all of these together using reduce. So we'll create a new variable for this. It's called total. And then we can take that array and we can call reduce. And reduce is going to take in two things. It's going to take in an accumulator and then the current value or the item, whatever we want to call it. Let's call it none. And then what we want to return from here is, let's set some parentheses here. We want to return the accumulator, and then we want to add to that the current item or number. And then we can pass another parameter in here, which is where we want to begin, which is 0. So let's go ahead and console.log total. And if we run that, we get 15. Okay, so adding all these together is 15. If I take that away, it should be 10. And then this here, basically the start value, if I make this 10, then what is this going to be if I run it? It's going to be 20 because we're starting at 10 and then we're adding all those together. Okay, so this is probably the easiest thing we can do with reduce. It can be used in really advanced type algorithms and stuff, but this isn't really an advanced type course. But let's take what we've learned here and let's apply it to calculate the wealth. And not only that, but output into the DOM the calculated wealth. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this down, and let's change this to calculate wealth button, and then we'll have a function here called calculate wealth. And we'll put this up here. Create a variable here called wealth, and we're going to set it to our data array, and we want to call reduce. Okay, so this is going to take in an accumulator and also our user, and then what we want to return here is the accumulator, and then we're going to append onto that user.money, because remember, user is the object, money is the value we actually want, and we want this to start at 0. Okay, so that will give us our wealth. Let's actually console log and see if we have any issues here. So if we go ahead and open up our console and calculate entire wealth, so we get, I have no idea if that's correct. We're gonna have to format it as money, so let's actually wrap this in money. What do we call it? Format money. Yeah, so that seems to be right, 860. So if I double and calculate, yeah, so that seems to be right. All right, so now that we're getting that, we need to actually put it into the DOM. So let's close that up, and let's create a variable here called wealth element, and we're going to set that to document.create element, because once again we're creating a new element for the DOM. We're going to create a div, and let's take that wealth element and set the inner HTML to set of backticks, and this is going to be an H3, and in this H3 we'll say total wealth, and then after that, still within this H3, let's put a strong tag. Okay, and then within this strong tag we're going to use our money format. Is it format money? Yeah, format money. So format money, and then inside here we're going to put our wealth. Now we need to actually get this into the DOM. So again, we're going to take the main element and we're going to call append child, which will do just that. It'll append a child element, and we want to append the wealth element. All right, so let's go ahead and try this. So calculate entire wealth, and there we go. So we get 462, which looks right to me. If we add, let's add some users here. Click calculate, and there we go. Double everybody's money, calculate, good. So everything seems to be working, all the functionality. Now there are other array methods as well, but the ones that we looked at here are definitely the most common that you'll run into the most. ForEach, map, sort, filter, and reduce. I would say those are the 5 most common ones. And we'll be using these throughout the course. We'll be using some other ones as well, but it's good to really get a handle on these ones. So that's why I wanted to do this project. All right, that's it, guys. I'll see you in the next one.